I watched a remarkable story. I mentioned this earlier on 60 Minutes last night. A highly controversial and expensive new therapy to help children with cerebral palsy. It was produced by Joe Townsend, and the reporter was Peter Overton. Now, cerebral palsy is the most common physical disability among Australian children. It's a permanent, lifelong condition as a result of damage to the developing brain either during pregnancy or shortly after birth. Cerebral palsy can affect body movement, muscle control, muscle coordination, muscle tone, reflex, posture and balance. Now, this therapy attempts to help children to sit up and then walk. Peter Overton followed the story of a little 4-year-old fellow called Blaise White who lives in Queensland and Ipswich. His parents, Cameron and Dawn, were told this little fellow would never walk, sit up or even roll. But they were determined to prove the doctors wrong. And last night, if you didn't have a tear in your eye, you've got a heart made of rock and granite. It was an incredible story. Peter Overton's on the line. G'day, Pete.
Morning, Ray.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you, and thank you for acknowledging Joe Townsend as well, and our camera crews. They were all fantastic in putting this together. And Dawn and Cameron and Blaise are just superstars. They're battlers, Ray, from Ipswich, and they had a huge impact. I've done hundreds of stories, and they've had a huge impact on me, and I know our camera crews and Joe.
Well, you were the man to do it. You, and I don't wish to embarrass you, you typify decency and all the good things in the world. And I commend you, and I commend the people who run the station for getting you to do it, because it was just wonderful. And tell us about this suit. And it's a controversial therapy. It's based in the United States, but families in southeastern Queensland have got together to bring a suit here as well, as we found out last night.
Yeah, it's called the TheraSuit, and it's basically like an exoskeleton, we'll call it. It's made of material with dozens of these little bungee elastic rubber cords, and it increases the amount of feedback the child receives, or the child's brain receives, from its body. And you can, I suppose in rudimentary terms, correct or challenge a child's motor control by these tight suits. And it's not mainstream, Ray. That's the thing. I think it will become mainstream, and it's used in conjunction with very intense physical therapy. And you may have seen that last night. You know, I spent hours with Blaise in his therapy sessions, and it is, you know, as an adult, you'll go, wow, this is hurting me. But he persevered, he perseveres, and as the parents said, you've got to do this. Physical therapy in conjunction with the TheraSuit is helping Blaise. And I must emphasise, Blaise has spastic quadriplegic cerebral palsy. It's one of the worst forms of cerebral palsy. He's never going to walk the streets or play the football or whatever. But last night, as you saw, those little steps, as we said in the script, were like running the 100 metres and winning the gold medal at the Olympic Games.
I'm glad
you've seen the world from a different perspective, not flopped on the floor.
I'm glad you mentioned spasticity there. I was guilty in 2004 of using that word in a private conversation, and as a result, I met with people from what was then called the Spastic Centre, and we now refer to people as people suffering with cerebral palsy. And I had apologised for my use of that word, as others have done before and since, but I would appeal to everyone. And I often hear it, and I grimace now, when people refer in a derogatory way to someone and they use that word. And just as an aside, I appeal to everyone to remove that word from their vocabulary. Just remove it altogether. It's very important.
You see a little man like Blaise, and you see exactly that. You don't associate Blaise with in a derogatory way, do you, with that word?
No. So anyway, I mention it only as an aside, because I still grimace having used that word myself inappropriately 9 years ago, and from time to time I hear other people use it, and I'm a bit of a narc now. I chip them and say, look, can you find another word? Get rid of that
word.
On you. And I'd appeal to everyone to do the same thing, as someone who was guilty of using it inappropriately myself. Now, the thing that struck me last night, and my entire family were watching it, Peter, you'll get this in years to come, those who are at home, when they're your children's age, they're at home anyway, but when they get older, Pete, they leave mum and dad on a Sunday night. You know,
I wait for that.
Yeah, don't wait too long, Pete. But everyone watched it, and the look on mum and dad's face when little Blaise made those little tiny steps was just absolutely incredible. Absolutely breathtaking.
Well, even now I get teary thinking about it, Ray, because I had the privilege of being right in there with them, and as Dawn said, now, as I said to you earlier, they're battlers and they've invested everything they have, all their love, all their money, and to see that, to be there and to bear witness to that moment, you know, it was like, as I said, the Olympics or winning the lottery. They're seeing their son stand up and seeing the world from a different perspective. So perspective I use in another way. This story gives a lot of people perspective, I hope, about what's going on in their lives.
What about the move from it being, you know, controversial to being mainstream? Do you think we're close to that, or is it still a way to go?
I interviewed a wonderful guy called Chad Timmermans last night. He's the psychologist and exercise physiologist, and he said he hopes it'll be mainstream sooner rather than later. But I don't know that I can say with any great authority that it's going to be soon. I think the results have just got to keep coming in, and hopefully people will introduce it into their treatment of these young kids. Because I think, as my father's a retired paediatrician, Ray, and we had some challenges with our little girl, and Dad read an article and he said, "Peter, this is your daughter. This isn't mainstream, but nothing ventured, nothing gained." And Dad's 75, and I thought, good on you, Dad. You know, you're an old medico, but this is the principle here for me is nothing ventured, nothing gained. Let's have a look at this. Let's have a look at that. And as a parent like Dawn, when she was told that her little boy would not walk, would not talk, would not stand up, would probably just never roll over, as a parent, you go, well, that's not going to happen. And she did everything in her power and the power of the internet to find out what she could do for her little boy. As we all know, we always look to help our children. And she's nothing ventured, nothing gained. Well, she's gained. She's gained heaps.
Certainly. It's funny, you know, my GP shrugs his shoulders sometimes when I talk about different things, and he said, well, if it works, why are we talking about it? Just try it. If it's working, it's working, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, and many GPs are like that, and that's reflected by your dad as well, of course, in a specialist area.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, old mate.
Thank you, Ray.
I couldn't help but ring you today. I just wanted to congratulate you and the rest of the crew, Joe included, on a fantastic segment last night.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ray.
All the best to you, Pete.
You too. Bye.
See you later on the news. Peter Overton from Channel 9. And I'm sure if you get into the 60 Minutes website, you can have a look. If you missed it last night, you can have a look at that as well and go from there.